Hello guys, Chris Keen here. We're bringing you Vlog Talk Part 2. We're talking All Elite Wrestling's All Out. Roll the intro. So as many of you may have already seen, All Elite Wrestling presented All Out on Saturday, September 5th, 2020. This will be the second time they have run an All Out pay-per-view in their existence, and the first time which they have had an All Elite Wrestling heavyweight champion heading in. In AEW's first installment in 2019, we crowned a new AEW World Heavyweight Champion when Chris Jericho defeated Hangman Adam Page. This year, the story was much different for both, as Hangman Adam Page went into All Out as one half of the World Tag Team Champions with Kenny Omega as they faced off against FTR, whereas Chris Jericho was in the midst of a heated feud against Orange Cassidy. Now, before I go into a full rundown of each match, I'd like to give you my initial thoughts of the pay-per-view. First of all, AEW has done an incredible job of giving you the best pay-per-views in the wrestling industry. Double or Nothing in 2019 really set the bar this high for AEW, and it has set expectations to that level. My initial reaction following All Out was that it was a good pay-per-view, but it did fall short of some of the heights that they have gotten to in the past. In previous pay-per-views, AEW would have at least one signature match that you could look back on and say, that was the match that did it for me. That was the highlight of that pay-per-view. And I just did not get that feeling after watching All Out. It was a solid pay-per-view from top to bottom, but it did not have that one signature match that we've come to see in previous pay-per-views. Double or Nothing 2019 had the infamous Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes match. All Out 2019 had the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks in the Escalera de la Muerte match. Full Gear had that amazingly brutal match between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley. Revolution even had the best tag team match of all time, the Young Bucks against Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega. And who could forget the amazing Stadium Stampede match at Double or Nothing 2020. However, I did not feel that any of the matches coming out of All Out really had that signature touch. Perhaps the Broken Rules match between Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy could have been that signature match. Unfortunately though, early on in that match, Matt Hardy suffered a bad injury. I'll get to more of that later on in the show. Now into the All Out Fallout, a top-down review of all the matches. All Out 2020 opened the pay-per-view with a cinematic match. A match that was initially intended to be on the buy-in, which is their version of the pre-show. Due to popular demand, we had the tooth and nail match between Big Swole and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, taking place at Dr. Britt Baker's dentist office. Personally, I am not a big fan of these cinematic matches. When I watch pro wrestling, I want a sense of realism. I watch it for the sport. The storylines are good too, but I do want that sports atmosphere. Cinematic matches are a lot like what WWE puts on, a bit overproduced, a bit much like a movie, and you really lose that sense of realism. Pro wrestling already requires for you to suspend your disbelief, and I feel that these cinematic matches ask too much of that from you. So for me, the match, while it offered some comedic value, it just didn't quite do it for me. On to the second match, which featured the Young Bucks against Jurassic Express. This is a match that came together the previous Wednesday on AEW Dynamite, where the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express teamed up, and the winners of that match had to face each other at All Out. Both the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express are ranked inside the top 5 in the AEW Tag Team rankings, so this was a match that does have some meaning to it. At the end of the day, both teams put on an excellent match. You know, I think you could possibly put this up there as the match of the night. It was very entertaining, especially for those of you like me who do enjoy some of the high-flying acrobatics. The Young Bucks walked away with the win, a much needed win, and hopefully this propels them closer to an AEW World Tag Team title shot. The next match, and one that definitely had very big consequences, was the 21-man Casino Battle Royale. I absolutely love these Battle Royales. Don't get me wrong, they can be a little sloppy at times, it can be a little chaotic, But what I love about these is that anyone can win, and it can really propel someone who perhaps would be considered on the mid-card all the way up to the top. This was a match where going in, you could look at the roster and envision any number of wrestlers winning it and getting themselves an AEW World title shot. But at the end of the day, I think the right person won. The Murder Hawk monster, Lance Archer, has only one loss to his name in All Elite Wrestling, and that came in the TNT title championship match at Double or Nothing. Since that match, he really has been doing a whole lot of nothing. He's been doing several matches on AEW Dark, beating up on several unlucky independent wrestlers, and he's been doing a lot of backstage vignettes where he's beaten up a lot of people, including intimidating Jake the Snake Roberts and interviewer Alex Marvez. So this was a match where Lance Archer had the opportunity to grab a world title shot, and he took it. After the Casino Battle Royale match, we had the Broken Rules match between Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara. This is a feud that I think a lot of people had high hopes for. Definitely a feud that should have helped skyrocket Sammy Guevara into the upper mid-card or perhaps the main event. Unfortunately, the match did not go as planned, and early on, Matt Hardy took an ugly bump where he fell, landed on his head directly on the concrete. Let me explain a little bit about the Broken Rules match. It's essentially a last man standing match. The key is to get your opponent incapacitated. The referee counts to 10. If your opponent cannot get up before the 10 count, the match is over. This match also had the added stipulation where if Matt Hardy did not win, he was done with AEW. After the ugly fall, you knew something real had just happened, because instead of immediately counting, referee Aubrey Edwards went in to check Matt Hardy, gave the X symbol, which for some of you insiders may already know is a symbol for, hey guys, something's real, we need to fix the situation. AEW doctor Doc Sampson checked on Matt Hardy. He did make an attempt to get up, but you could tell something was off, something was not right. He was a little weak on his legs. He stumbled, grabbing onto Sammy Guevara. Overall, it was very tough to watch, a very scary situation. At the end of the day, Matt Hardy is okay. So, spoiler there, Matt Hardy is okay. He did appear on AEW Dynamite the Wednesday after the show. But nonetheless, for those of us watching the show live, it was a scary situation. It was hard to watch, and it did seem to create a little bit of chaos with the overall production. Tony Khan wisely put a pause to the match. The camera cut to Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur, the announcers, as they talked about the match. This gave the doctors some time to check out Matt Hardy, and ultimately they did clear him to finish the match. Although you could also tell with the way the match finished, it was sort of rushed. Bit of a disappointing match given the hype, but given the situation, you know, the fact that they were even able to finish it, I do got to give a lot of the credit to the wrestlers and to Matt Hardy. Definitely a true professional. But anytime you have an injury involving your brain, you really have to be careful. It was really scary. There's a lot of science around brain injuries now, so anyone that watched it, this match did leave a bit of a dark cloud over the rest of the pay-per-view, and that also perhaps may have taken away from some of our enjoyment of it. Moving on to our next match, this was the AEW Women's Championship match between Hikaru Shida and the NWA Women's Champion Thunder Rosa. Very tough spot for these girls to be in this match. Following up after the scary ending of the Broken Rules match, the small crowd that was there was clearly deflated. Everybody's thoughts were on Matt Hardy and his health, but a lot of credit to both Shida and Thunder Rosa. They put on an outstanding match. The AEW women's division has received a lot of criticism due to a number of injuries, due to a number of their talent being off in Europe or in Japan and unable to get to the United States, which has led to Tony Khan having to sign a lot of new talent and bring in wrestlers from other companies, Thunder Rosa being one of them. Both women put on an outstanding match. This was probably one of the best women's matches in All Elite Wrestling. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I highly recommend it. The end result was somewhat predictable, with Hikaru Shida walking away with the victory. I kind of figured that the NWA Women's Champion was not going to walk away with the AEW Women's title, although it would have been a really nice swerve to happen. I think there was a lot of uncertainty on how many more dates they could bring Thunder Rosa in. However, for what it was an outstanding women's match and one of the best matches of the night.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Following the women's title match, we had an 8-man tag team match featuring the Dark Order and the Nightmare Family. Now, this match came about after Mr. Brody Lee, don't forget the Mr., defeated Cody Rhodes for the TNT title at Dynamite. After that match, the Dark Order basically jumped Cody Rhodes, beat up Dustin Rhodes, beat up QT Marshall, and Anna Jay choked out Cody's wife to end the show. They set up a match where Dustin Rhodes teamed up with QT Marshall, Scorpio Sky, who is a friend of Cody's, and Matt Cardona, who is a very close friend of Cody's, formerly known as Zack Ryder in WWE. This was another really good match that I thought was better and over-delivered on what I expected going in. The finish was also unpredictable, as I fully expected that the Dark Order was going to go over here and further establish themselves as a force to be reckoned with. However, that did not happen. Mr. Brody Lee had basically set up Colt Cabana for the win. Colt decided, no, I'm not going to win this way. He wanted to win on his own terms, and unfortunately, that is what cost him the match. Instead of simply putting Dark Order over, this sets up an interesting dynamic between Mr. Brody Lee and Colt Cabana. And for Mr. Brody Lee, this is 2 pay-per-view losses in a row, something he clearly is upset about.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
I need papers! Give me papers! Next up was the AEW World Tag Team Championship match between Hangman Adam Page, Kenny Omega, and FTR. This was a match that I think was overly hyped going in. A lot of expectations were that this could potentially be the best tag team match we've ever seen. In my opinion, it did fall slightly short of what we saw at Revolution between the Young Bucks and Hangman and Omega. And that's why those of you that complained a little bit from my last video where I put the Young Bucks slightly ahead of FTR, that's why. The Young Bucks are the best tag team in the world. But nonetheless, don't let that ruin the match for you. It did deliver as a top quality tag team match. The storytelling was top notch. You know, Hangman was absolutely duped by these 2 guys, FTR, who he thought were his friends. They led him to turn his back on his real friends, and now he's lost his real friends. Coming out of the match, the character arc for Hangman is amazing. There's a lot of ways they can go with the story. I'm truly looking forward to it. Ultimately, during the match, we did not see too many miscommunications between Hangman and Omega. They did fight a very good match, so it was a nice clean win. FTR gets put over. They are now the AEW World Tag Team Champions. Extremely interesting, though, was the ending of the match. Kenny Omega comes out with that table looking like he's going to hit Hangman. Instead, he throws it down. Hangman, who had just been beat up, tries to grab onto Kenny to hold him up. Kenny walks away. He essentially turns his back on his tag team partner, a friend, a brother of his from the Elite for years, and walks out. The camera follows Kenny into the back, where he's met by the Young Bucks asking him, hey, what's going on, Kenny? Kenny doesn't even go to his locker room to pick up his clothes. We see Kenny Omega walking straight to the parking lot, straight out of the arena, and he asks the Young Bucks, are you with me or are you out? Kenny says, it's time to get back to the way things were. What does that mean? What could Kenny be talking about? So now we have a very interesting dynamic. Is Kenny face? Is Kenny heel? Is Hangman face? Is he heel? Where do the Young Bucks fit into all this? We know that the Young Bucks did kick Hangman Page out of the Elite. Hangman, several months ago, wanted to leave the Elite. Very interesting dynamic there. Do we see Hangman and Kenny feuding after this? Or will they eventually reconcile and make up?
Stop it. Get some help.
Next up was the first ever Mimosa Mayhem match between Orange Cassidy and Le Champion, the Demo God, Chris Jericho. Each having a victory over the other. And you know what? This was a fun gimmick match that they put on. This was not something that any of us have really seen before. A little bit of a silly match with the vats of mimosa on the outside. But I've had a lot of fun with it. It wasn't the memorable match that the Stadium Stampede was, but it was a lot of fun. Orange Cassidy goes over Chris Jericho by knocking him into that vat of mimosa. A very nice picture of Jericho just sort of laying in there as if he's in a hot tub. Really fun match, really enjoyable. And this is also what AEW is all about. It's not about the seriousness of certain storylines. It's not always about the flips and the high-risk maneuvers. A lot of it is just about exploring creativity and having fun. And you could clearly see both these guys having a lot of fun with this match and with this feud overall. And finally, we head to the main event. Jon Moxley against Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, who is better than you, and you know it. This is really a good match that I was really looking forward to going in. The young 23-year-old MJF against the wily veteran Jon Moxley, who has been at the top before in other companies, who has headlined in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and who has been the AEW World Champion for several months. At the end of the day, I did feel it would be a little bit early for MJF to win his first championship. He certainly does have the talent to carry the company, and he's definitely one of the best guys on the mic. But at the end of the day, I do feel that Jon Moxley walking out with the title was the right call. It was a very good match, a very interesting dynamic with Jon Moxley being barred from using his finisher, the paradigm shift. They did tease throughout the match several times where Moxley went for that paradigm shift and realized, no, I'm gonna lose the title if I do this. One thing that surprised me a little bit was that Wardlow did not play too big of a role in the match. At the end though, his actions did cost MJF the match, as Wardlow's distraction with the referee and his very poor throw of the Dynamite Diamond ring to MJF was incomplete. Moxley seized on the opportunity to hit the paradigm shift, so he did cheat to win and got the 1-2-3. Remember though, before the match, Moxley did say he is the bad guy. Not MJF, but Moxley's the bad guy. And what do bad guys do? They cheat to win. So overall, that was All Elite Wrestling's All Out 2020. Like I said off the top, a very good pay-per-view, a very enjoyable pay-per-view, but ultimately one that did fall slightly below the sky-high expectations AEW has created for their pay-per-views. The next pay-per-view is 2 months away on Saturday, November 7th. It is 2020's version of Full Gear. Let's see where AEW goes from here. I, for one, am very interested. Thank you all for watching this week's video. Please leave a comment below with your favorite parts of All Out and what you would like to see from AEW going forward. Perhaps you have an interesting match idea or a feud idea. If you like this video, please give that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe with bell notifications, and I will see you guys next week.